Now we will start the afternoon session. The first panel will be the topic of AI, operation research, and blockchain. So we will have 4 speakers to the stage. First speaker, Director of the Purdue Blockchain Lab and Association, Professor at Purdue University, Dr. Wang. Welcome. She's also the director of IE Blockchain Lab and the co-director of Smart Design Lab at the Purdue University. Welcome. Okay, next speaker will be the founder of Agent Capital, Mr. Huadong Pang. Welcome. Mr. Pang's expertise including the macro quantities trading strategies, equity and fixed income relative value, and portfolio management and optimization. Welcome. Our third speaker will be the founder and chairman of Loopring Protocol, Daniel Wang. Welcome, Mr. Wang. Mr. Wang also used to work as a senior software engineer and tech lead at Google Mountain View, a senior director of engineering at Jingdong.com, and a senior director at Zhong'an Insurance. Welcome. And finally, Mr. Maomao Hu is the co-founder at Cora, which is building capital market infrastructure in emerging markets. He's previously led the AI practice at management consulting firm. Welcome, Mr. Hu. So let's get our afternoon session started.
Thanks everybody for coming back from lunch. Thanks to our speakers for, I think it was going to be a fun session. So as you guys know, the topic of this session is AI, operations research, and blockchain. Obviously, we've talked a lot about AI, we've talked a lot about blockchain, definitely AI for trading. We'd love to get your thoughts on this specific topic because, you know, AI for trading is really cool because we can make money that way. But ultimately, you know, cost savings is another way to increase profitability, and that all comes from operational efficiency, right? But before we dig into that, we'd love to hear a bit more about your backgrounds. You know, so we got kind of an intro from the presenter, but if you could go give a quick intro to your background and your in these fields, and just so the audience can get a deeper understanding.
You first.
My name is Hong. I'm an associate professor at Purdue Industrial Engineering Department. We initiate the first blockchain lab in the United States, focusing on economic and operation research aspect.
Hi everybody. Good afternoon. My name is Henry Pang. I graduated from MIT in 2007. Got my PhD in mathematics there, and then after that I went to Wall Street and worked at JP Morgan and several other hedge funds. So I'm more like a Wall Street guy. Before I joined blockchain, and so after I joined blockchain, I'm major focusing on the investment side, which means most time in the secondary market because you know, with other blockchain we have the cryptocurrency and all the trading. Actually, we can use a lot of the Wall Street kind of algorithm on this cryptocurrency trading. Yeah.
This is Daniel Wang. I'm from the Loopring Foundation. I'm also the creator and the main developer of the Loopring protocol. I used to work for Google as a software engineer and for JD.com as a senior engineering director. So basically, I'm from a technical engineering background.
Gotcha. And just a quick intro to myself. This is actually a topic pretty close to my heart. So I used to lead the AI practice at a consulting firm. And we worked on a project where we analyzed the entire operational backend for Morgan Stanley Wealth Management for the robo-advisor. We found out we could automate about 80% of that in 2 years, but we told them 50 because we didn't want to freak them out. So let's break this down by steps. So you know, we have AI, we have blockchain, we have operational efficiency. These are all pretty big kind of topics. Let's start with just blockchain and operational efficiency. So maybe Daniel and Professor, could you talk about your perspectives on using just the blockchain and how it can help with these kind of processes?
I'm more in the research side. So our lab actually working on, as a system, how well is the blockchain works. So now if you go to talk, I get a lot of email from the company basically asking me, should my company use blockchain to replace this or replace that? Okay, and the default answer a lot of time to them is yes, because this is the buzzword, because they don't want to be left behind. But actually, I find a lot of the people now using the solution to find the problem instead of the other way around. So I usually ask them, why do you want us to switch to blockchain? To be honest with you, many people come to me actually don't realize what blockchain is. They pretty much, there's one company actually asked me, does that mean like I need to pay and buy all the stuff through Bitcoin? I say, no, that has nothing to do with blockchain adoption, right? So, so in this case, blockchain has been most well known for the cryptocurrency, obviously. But cryptocurrency is only one aspect of application. IBM is trying to totally reinvent supply chain with the blockchain and IoT. The healthcare system is trying to see if they can use the blockchain to actually have the patient to really own their record and so on and so forth. So my work is to see that first. Is that a good idea for the specific system? What's the cost? What's the pros and cons if you switch from the traditional centralized system to a distributed system? Okay, what's the caveat you can meet in the whole process? And then, if blockchain is a good strategy, how do you design the mechanism of the blockchain, okay, to make it actually optimal for your process? So that's actually the major thing our lab is studying.
I kind of agree with Dr. Wang. A lot of companies are trying to use blockchain technology because they also know this is the buzzword. But the main purpose for a lot of companies to use blockchain or to tell their stockholders that they are trying to use blockchain is that they want to, their stock price to go up a little bit, right? But when you really look into the technology and try to use it in your real scenario, then you will find a lot of problems. You have the security problem, you have the scalability, you have all kinds of issues, and it's not just several smart contract can solve those problems, right? I believe blockchain has a huge potential, but currently I don't think it's time for a lot of companies to adopt the technology for massive real world uses. Right now, I think if you use blockchain for like information, like content sharing, IP stuff, tracing information, that's cool. But if you want to handle a lot of information, massive requests per second, that's impossible. So I think in general, the blockchain technology is still in its very early stage. A lot of projects, they raise millions of dollars, but their project is just an experiment.
Gotcha. Yeah, and I think that's why it's so important for us to keep researching and developing these blockchain technologies, so get there someday, hopefully. So, I feel like 2017 and 2018, honestly, was kind of the year of the blockchain. But as Henry probably knows, 2016 was kind of the year of the AI. So could you tell us a bit about your perspective about AI and operational efficiency?
The major use of us for using AI is on trading, so trading the cryptocurrency. But on the other side, I think the issue of the AI is how you get your data, right? You use your data training your model and also using the data to apply your model. I believe the blockchain may be one solution for that because especially we know, for example, in China, if you want to get the data, either the data is controlled by the government or controlled by this called BAT, this big company. It's very hard for the AI company to get the cheap data. So the blockchain may give a new solution for the company to using this kind of token or some incentive to gather the data from the individual, because all the data actually can belong to this individual person. So maybe the blockchain can help the AI for the data side and how to retrieve the data cheaply. On the other hand, is once you have the data, how do you store this data? Maybe the blockchain have this kind of distribution kind of way to store this data, because a lot of the AI data is huge. For example, if we want to using the driverless kind of like algorithm, you need to collect all the data on the road. This kind of data is huge, so I think the decentralized way may be a better way. This is how I think the AI can work with a blockchain.
Gotcha. Yeah, so back when we were actually did a project where we tried to use Bayesian networks to train chat agents based off chat logs. But we actually had an issue where, because the data quality standards weren't being enforced, we didn't have the right labels. So we didn't know which chats were positive or non-positive. We actually had to go back and redo sentiment analysis across all of them. But I feel like for blockchains, when we talk about the quality standards that they enforce on the data that goes in, I feel like that would be another really great use case for the blockchain here.
I think one thing is now it is really popular to talk about edge computing or fog computing, which you pretty much look at actually a distributed sensors or other IoTs, do the calculation, then the distributed data system is become a must. It's not even an option, because you have all these places you need to sync the data.
Absolutely. Actually, speaking of distributed systems and syncing data, one thing that we talk about a lot that looks a little bit like AI these days is smart contracts. Although they're not really contracts, they're really very simple programs. How do you feel that these smart contracts fit into operations research? Maybe starting with you, Daniel, and then going to Henry.
I don't know. I'm not an expert in AI at all. Smart contract is not smart at all. It's really simple program that you can deploy onto blockchain to run to check the world state and update the world states. It has a lot of problems in terms of debugging and fixing bugs. So I would say if you really care about the data security, we are talking about data, right? Talking about computations. If you really care about that, you should be really careful about designing your smart contract to make sure all the business rules are well designed, or in other words, the token economy is designed well enough so that everybody get their incentive to follow the rules. Besides that, I think I don't know. Just there are a lot of potentials to integrate AI with blockchain. I have mentioned this a couple of times. I envision a economy where not only human beings they interact with each other to do business. I also believe in the future, robots or AI-powered agents, they are going to do business with humans, with each other, and they are going to interact with each other by using the smart contract to pay each other with token transfers. So I think that's probably the economy 2.0. But it's going to happen maybe in 2 years, maybe in 10, 20 years, who knows? But that's the direction I really believe is going to happen. And maybe I watch too much sci-fi, but I believe if that happens, I'm really happy with that, right? So that's the ultimate fusion of AI with blockchain, in my opinion.
Well, I think there are areas where that already exists, such as equity markets and futures markets, which are basically algo trading battlegrounds. And actually now we talk about crypto markets, that's kind of merging all three, right? So Henry, you've worked a lot with trading and certainly trading with digital assets. What are your thoughts on that kind of new economy that we're seeing?
Okay, so I believe gradually, I think the Wall Street will accept the fact the cryptocurrency may be one of the major asset instead of the traditional asset. So the smart contract actually can help the Wall Street to building up some new trading contract, like for example, derivative. I think a lot of the Wall Street trading on some like options, futures, and even some more complex derivatives. All this stuff usually this is the work is done by the IB, the bank like JP Morgan, Goldman Sachs. But maybe if we have this kind of like new smart contract, maybe we can have some distributed kind of Wall Street. So if you want to sell some risk or you want to own some risk, maybe you don't want to go to the JP Morgan to construct this for you. You can ask from the market. For example, you want to get an insurance, even the auto insurance or health insurance, as long as the market can have a good model to price this. So you can use this kind of smart contract to construct your own insurance contract instead of using this kind of like insurance company. So and also trading is same thing. So if you want to believe some for example the gold price in next month will go to some level, you can definitely construct your own thing. You don't need a centralized company to do this for you. So I think that definitely can help the whole financial market in a new stage instead of the current more centralized financial world. As we know, the 2008, the reason why we have this big financial crisis is because all our financial kind of trading or investment is suggested or designed by some centralized company. And when they design this, actually, if they, for example, make a mistake on pricing risk, this risk can impact so many investors. So that kind of, I think the reason why we have this 2008, systematic risk on the market. So maybe I think the blockchain can give us another way to distribute our risk. Yeah.
That's a really interesting thought. And I want to get your thoughts on that, Professor Wang, because so you mentioned distributed Wall Street, you mentioned token economy. We're both talking about decentralizing communities and having work being done outside of a centralized party. How does that impact the way we think about operations research?
Operation research is pretty much saying how we design a system to make it work the best. Okay. When we look at the distributed system, there are a lot of unique problems coming in here. One thing I'm really looking at when you guys talk about all of these, we want to use the blockchain asset, right? Trading. We want to have the blockchain so we get rid of the middleman. That's actually what everybody's talking about. And how do we get rid of the middleman is by the whole community actually validate the information in there. I look at more from the game theory point of view that everybody wants to optimize their own profit, period. So in this case, if it has become a distributed system, every part contributes, then everybody has a motivation to actually give information that can optimize themselves. So we are using computer models trying to tell, in these cases, when you have this dishonesty happening here, what kind of incentive you need to design to discourage this kind of dishonesty and encourage actually the true information in here. And also, I'm a believer that for a lot of the system, not cryptocurrency, but the other system, we probably need to look at some kind of a hybrid system, which means there is still a centralized part to monitor the system for any what we call abnormal event. Okay, so for example, if there's a group of the dishonest miner or trader wants to dominate the market, okay, then even the individual user find out there too, but because they have smaller amount of the computational power, they can do nothing about that. And in this case, somebody need to intervene. Okay, and also, so when we talk about the asset trading, I know the agriculture industry trying very hard to actually adopt the blockchain, then in these cases, the regulation and the government involvement actually is unpreventable, since the government will never say that we will get rid of HIPAA, for example, so you can just adopt the blockchain so every patient have their own record, which also means that you can cheat those people who don't have that much technology to get their data without somebody stopping you there. So when I'm looking at these, I'm more looking at, yes, distributed system is very good. That means we get rid of middlemen, we get rid of the government, everybody own their own data, but every freedom comes with a responsibility. Are we ready for the responsibility? That's actually a topic I really want to address in my research.
That's really interesting. I'm going to do a shameless plug for my project, Cora, because we're actually building blockchains for agricultural value chains in Ghana. financial data and financial agreements there are quite weak, so we're trying to use the blockchain to
Right.
inject trust into there. But I want to get your thoughts on this, Daniel, because you come from an engineering standpoint. Because, I feel like when we talk about consensus algorithms, we talk about RAF, we talk about Paxos, we talk about very rigorous deterministic algorithms. But now when we bring game theory into it and the randomness that human beings bring to the table, when designing these distributed systems, I feel like it's almost a different way to think about these kind of paradigms. So how are your thoughts about something like Casper, which is very game theoretic as opposed to like computer science based?
Well, just as Professor Wang mentioned, I also believe that a hybrid system is going to work better. If you look at the ICO phenomena, there's a lot of freedom and there's a lot of chaos. So consensus without regulation is going to be, I don't know, meaningless, or it's going to be a disaster. So the different type of consensus algorithm, they apply to different scenarios. So I'm personally very interested in like multi-layer consensus. For example, the depots can be considered as another layer of consensus to elect the miners, right? And then those miners is going to raise another level of consensus to make sure the data is validated and put into the block. We also internally are doing some research to separate computation from persistence. So take the smart contract as an example. There are a lot of CPU power to calculate the final state chains. We call them like branch predictions. So there are a lot of different type of consensus. Some to elect miners, some to do the computation, some to persist the data, the state. Casper, I think, I look forward to Casper. It's going to be very important for the scalability solution for Ethereum. But as for any new technologies, I have doubt. I have to wait to see it happens as expected before we can say this is going to work or not, right? So I'm a big believer in blockchain technology in general, but I doubt. I have doubt over almost all the new technologies until they prove they work.
Right. So Henry, I feel like this is a great question for you because Eifen Capital is one of the premier investment firms in China. It's got a very rigorous process for evaluating ICOs, and one of them is governance, right? So how could you talk a bit about how the level of how projects reach consensus on what to build, how that impacts your investment process?
You mean the regulation? Or?
Yeah, regulation, internal governance, controls on how they spend their money, transparency, whatever things impact your investment thinking.
Okay, so I think as everybody knows that last year, September 4th, China banned all the ICOs. They also banned the trading of the cryptocurrency in China. If you look at the Bitcoin price, then it dropped hugely, right? So. But after that, it seems like the Bitcoin kind of neglected this kind of information, so it's very interesting. So actually, I know the reason why China want to have this policy, because of the ICO had a huge kind of chaos last year. So it's like crazy. If you have a white paper, you don't need to do anything, just can raise like millions of dollars in several days. And that kind of speculation kind of activity is dramatic in China. I think if you stay in the U.S., you may not feel that. But if you're in China, the people just don't care about what kind of project you're working on. They don't even read your white paper. They just said, okay, I want to invest. Because I know maybe it can go like 3 or 4 times, in several days when it goes to the secondary market. So I think China government is really worried about this kind of financial risk, because if so many people involved in this kind of big speculation or called big bubble, once this bubble bursts, which means if some people lost a lot of money on this, the government actually cannot control these things. This is also because there's almost no obvious way to regulate this. I mean, even in U.S., I think it is still a long way for U.S. Government or U.S. Regulator to give a very specific idea how to regulate the cryptocurrency. I think people heard about the Ethereum, to try to see if it's a security or not. I mean, it's but in China actually worse than that, because Chinese government, I think, they really want to wait. For example, if other governments, other countries already give out all this regulation. So when you try to look at all these projects in China, you can talk about blockchain technology in China. That's fine. The government actually encourages that. But the problem is, if you want to have a token, especially you want to do the ICO, I don't think you can do much in China. So you can do in Singapore or other countries. And sometimes when you talk about the token trading in China, very publicly, it's still a very it's a concern actually. So, but for us, if you there's really some very good projects of blockchain in China, so I think the way is you focus on the technology, focusing on how this how the team, and if they want to do the ICO, I think there's still a way to go abroad to do the ICOs. And if you are traditional China VC, what we do is we can invest on equity of the company, and maybe you have a contract, see how much I invest on your equity when you do the ICO abroad. Maybe you can exchange some token, something like that. So it's this thing can be follow the regulation of China, but I don't think it's a good idea in China, in community or in some discussion group talking about the token price. I don't think that's a nice that's the right way currently.
Yeah, so it's 2017. We could call it Year of the Blockchain, or we could just be more blunt, just call it Year of the ICO. It sounds like there's still a lot of research and development from a regulatory perspective to get to a functional, well-regulated operational system in this decentralized blockchain economy. So just going, I guess, Daniel, Henry, and Professor, what do you feel like? What are your predictions for 2018, in like by end of year for how the industry is gonna change?
First of all, I regretted that I did ICO. I would do it differently if I know the regulation is going to come soon. And I do believe that in a lot of jurisdictions, regulation is going to come very soon. And the second trend is that a lot of traditional asset, a real-world asset, will be tokenized. So there will be a lot of security type of tokens. And for trading those security type of tokens, not only the issuers of those tokens are going to be regulated, I think a lot of exchanges are also going to be regulated. And because different countries, they have different rules, so exchanges, no matter it's centralized or decentralized, they need to get different license from different countries in order to serve those people from their country. So so the trend is exchanges, they are not going to be one exchange get popular all over the world. They can be popular in certain jurisdiction, but not the others. Yeah, basically that's it.
Yeah, so I think last year, I think the bigger event is the Bitcoin. The price once almost reached $20,000. So that kind of thing actually makes this world finally kind of like more and more people enter this blockchain world. I think that's a significant event. So for example, if last year the Bitcoin price is below, say, $1,000, I don't think so many people will be enter this this world. So this is one side. Another side is because of this huge volatility of the cryptocurrency, you can invest on something, using some financial tools to manage your asset, right? You can go to the mutual fund. There's a lot of hedge fund. They even have this stock market. You can manage your asset. But probably in the crypto world, for example, you have like 1,000 BTC. That's a lot of money. But probably the volatility is so high, and every day your asset is changed dramatically, right? So one day drop 10%, another 20%. How you manage your asset? That I think could be a very big question in 2018. So which means the asset management of cryptocurrency will be a very big issue, not only for your personal, also for this project team. Because you raise a lot of the Ethereum, you use a lot of the BTC for a project. How you manage this kind of asset? You cannot just stay there. For example, if you raise money in the January, and the Ethereum is about like $1,300 US, but in the April it dropped about below 400. So your team actually it didn't do anything, but your team's assets it dropped about 70%. That's a huge problem, right? So you may not have the money to continue your project. You may not have enough money to go to the secondary market. You go to an exchange. So all this problem actually it didn't happen last year, because last year it's everything is bullish, a very bullish market. So people don't care. You just hold your cryptocurrency. You can enjoy this the value is going up. But this year it's a big bear market, and I think the bear market may continue maybe next year. I don't know. So if you have this huge kind of crypto asset, the big problem is how to manage that. So this is actually what we are doing. Actually, we're trying to help this project, also program, also the individual to manage the crypto asset, and using our traditional like a Wall Street trading way, quantitative trading, algorithm trading, high frequency trading, trying to at least to reduce your risk. Yeah, I think that's what happened in 2018.
I think there will be a lot of regulation coming out this year, because the regulation will try to catch up with what's happening here. I also think a lot of the big name will start to put in here and start to play a role. I'm looking for more cryptocurrency-based financial product emerging in the market. Okay. I expect, and also I know there has been ETF there, but later we will see more derivative, and the combination of the cryptocurrency with the traditional asset, kind of the product for 2018, and I kind of hope in 2018 I see more solid application of blockchain in other area. Okay, for example, IBM is combining with 9 food companies to have a IoT combined blockchain network. So the customer, by pushing on one button, you can trace where the food is coming from. Are there any recall or contamination of the food? Are they actually local or not? Are they organic based on what standard? So I think I put a lot of hope, and I'm looking at that. The other area, I'm expecting the social network, the blockchain-based social network. I expect a lot of work require validation to be backed up by the blockchain. So I think this is the year that the real application, other than the cryptocurrency, start to emerging, and the people will kind of the flip side is that people will realize that there are a lot of problems in there instead of just coding and apply the network. Remember, when we talk about the manufacturing, United States actually have a period of the time that most of the company outsource their production, right, to reduce the price. But they create a unique problem because you lose direct control of the quality. Okay, and there's communication and a lot of things going up in here. I expect similar thing actually happening when when the society moving from a centralized system. Centralized system has a lot of disadvantage, but usually it is the most cost efficient, strategy. So when you go from a centralized system to a decentralized system, I'm expecting a lot of the problem to emerge.
Gotcha. I want to see if there's any questions from the audience. Can we get a mic over there? This gentleman right over here by the wall.
So I have a question with what you were talking about, the governance and the decentralization will have some problems with like controlling it and having someone dominate the blockchain. So like there's one good example, and we can probably see plenty of good examples. One of them is EOS DAC. I don't know if you have heard about it, but they're trying to create a they're using proof of network, and they're using the community to govern the whole system. So there is definitely people who are on the top by just staking their coins, but along with that, they can run the whole blockchain. So do you think like that could be a possible solution to the same problem here?
It's not a problem for private chain. In other words, private chain always have a centralized part, and with the and the incentive is actually more in the principal agent game, which means I give you the policy, you follow. Otherwise, you cannot participate in the game. For the public chain, this is a problem. And I do computer simulation. You can show that when you run the computer simulation, people will start to self-organizing so that they have more chance, to beat the other group. That's kind of saying if you have a totally distributed system, but you are awarding the person who has the most computational power, then people will self-organizing to form the group trying to dominating. And if you think about that, this is a self-centralization process because of the incentive. So one research project I'm trying to do is that in this common chain, how can you carefully design the incentive system to discourage this kind of the behavior. And that's very important if you actually want to have a fair competition in here and without a hidden dominating part who you say you have a distributed system, but actually this is even worse because even somebody find there's something wrong, you don't have a place to report. Since you don't know there's a big organization in there, you don't even know who is doing the bad thing, right? So another related thing is there are a lot of talk about to have the resources, the utility to become the token. Then you need to worry about the same problem that there's a group holding majority of the token, so they totally control that. And by doing that, they actually control beyond the crypto world. They actually control the resources.
Thank you, Dr. Wang.
This gentleman over here. Any questions over on that side? Okay, I see you.
Yeah, I think it's a good discussion. Just want to, what I see is that it's like almost two different universes, right? There's a one universe of cryptos. They live in their own world. There's a one universe non-cryptos. You almost need a passport to go from one to other, right? That's how it is. They don't talk same language, right? But what I want to ask you is that centralization brings a lot of efficiency, right? Cost savings. And decentralization brings in risk management and checks and balances. The way I see is that they have to marry together to come with a very innovative, good, balanced systems. That's why I see it as, I mean, of course, we are in the beginning of the stage, so people are polarized a lot. So I wanted to hear from you guys, how do you think, is there any efforts going on, or how do you see that world where centralization, decentralization comes together, right? And I want to hear your views on that.
When you talk about decentralization, first, there are multiple levels of this concept. If you look at a lot of projects, their code base is open sourced, and you can see by design, in theory, it's decentralized. But if you look at the operational facts, they are not, right? Let's say take the depots or POS as an example. If only a dozen of accounts hold like 50% of the tokens, it's centralized. It's totally centralized. It's even more centralized than some companies, right? And the other fact is that you have to realize that there's no black and white between centralization and decentralization. There are like gray areas. And you look at the blockchain technology, it offers decentralization as one feature. It also offers like transparency as another feature, and being anonymous as a third feature, maybe even more. So when we look at blockchain technologies, when we want to use the blockchain technologies, we don't just say we want to go to be fully decentralized. Maybe you just want to make the data accessible to everyone. Maybe you want to offer a way to do something in an anonymous way, right? So decentralization is not something I personally want to go that far to push it 100% decentralized. I think by human nature, there's no way that any business model, any interaction can be fully decentralized, because we, as human beings, we really admire some people who are better than us, right? So we don't want to make decisions. Take the investment as an example. If you want to invest in something, you really want to just listen to people who are really good at reinvestment. By that, you are going to be like more centralized, because you want to give the power to someone who is going to do better than we do, right? So I think there's a lot of gray areas in between.
I think that gentleman had a question.
Thank you. My name is Laurent. I just wanted to make sure that I had understood what you said, Mr. Pang. Yes. From what you said, I understand that maybe, okay, there's a trend, Bitcoin is a trend that allows company to access cheap data. And that is done mainly through the token incentives. So the consumer, because he has that new tokenized experience, has more incentive to share its information. Is that kind of what you were saying?
Yes. So, for example, actually, from the everyday, right, the people can generate a lot of data, right? When you wake up, I mean, you go to maybe get your breakfast, you buy things, and you go to Uber, driving to your working place, and you generate a lot of the data, and the AI, any program, if you want to use in the personal data, there's two ways. One way to get it from the centralized company, right? For example, the company can record all this data, but the problem is it could be very expensive, right? Because the big company, when they don't want to sell the data, they want to control the data, because the data is the power. Second thing is, if they want to sell, it may be very expensive. Another way is you can collect all this data from this individual person who produced the data. But why they want to collect the data and want to sell to you, you need use some incentive. For example, the token, right? So
yeah. So it seems to me, and as a user of the Brave browser,
yeah,
browser, when you use and you watch YouTube or you make a comment, you can collect some some tokens. So I can feel, of course, that my behavior is affected by that tokenization.
Right.
But listening to a lot of speakers, it actually seems that the real revolution is the tokenization. It's not really the blockchain as such, because I don't think that those companies, they're going to change their operation and go blockchain. They're going to do the same thing that they were doing before. They're just going to add a layer of tokenization so that their consumer is going to share more information, so that they could make, they can optimize, or they can create more values. So is that something that makes sense for you? So they will keep the centralized operation, and they will add an element of layer. And the real revolution in the coming 2 or 3 years is going to be the tokenization rather than the blockchainization.
Yeah. Okay. So the blockchain, there's actually two ways. One is called the blockchain technology. Another called token, right? So token is more like some financial incentive to make the system is more efficient. So sometimes we need to separate these two things. We cannot just say technology. So if you have the blockchain technology, doesn't mean you have to have the token. But you have the token, that means you have to use the blockchain as your main technology for your company. But the token actually, I think itself is already a very good way to improve your company's operation. because that's kind of incentive. For example, there's also relative. See, for example, in one company you have different groups, right? Group can work together, but in the traditional way, if another group helps your group, you can just say thank you, and at the end of the year, it's very hard to quantify that.
Yeah.
What's your help? But if you have a token, if you help our group, I can give you a token immediately. At the end of the year, you can share our bonus pool using your token, right? So this kind of way can make the people work together more efficiently.
Yeah, I agree. Right.
Yeah.
And my last question I have for the three speakers, or actually for the four speakers, is okay, if that tokenization is an element that is going to be become even more crucial as the months pass, how is that possible in China? Because if by using the Brave browser, I can accumulate BAT token, then I can then trade in a country where regulations are the way they are in China. How is that tokenization be possible? Thank you.
So it depends on if you go to public market, I think it's very hard. I mean, because China already banned this kind of trading. But if you say this token can only circulate in some some local place, like our own company inside, I think that's fine because it's not on the public market, right? So and even in the public market, see for example, I use the token to make people trying to share their data. That's another way. See, for example, you can think about this as some credit number. So a credit. So which means if you do this, I just count your this credit, and that kind of token cannot be traded publicly, but we can use this token to exchange some service like some food or whatever, grocery shopping.
But then
discount.
isn't it like just like a miles and more system? You know what I'm saying?
Right.
And then we are back to an old system. I thought the power of the tokenization was that whatever token I'm getting, I can exchange it, and I can change it across other platforms. But my question is really specific to not what would happen in one company, because that would be local gamification, or I don't know what's the exact term, to push my employees to interact more. I'm talking about a company such as Hire. Electro, okay, it's the equivalent of maybe Samsung for fridges and everything. Is a very powerful company over there. So if Hire wanted to collect more information from their user through the fridge, through their connected devices, then how would they do that with a tokenized system if that token cannot be exchanged? Isn't just a miles and more system? I'm sorry to be so insistent.
The token can always be exchanged. Okay, it's just like to what scope. That's number one, and also it doesn't has to be token.
Can it be exchanged in China? The question is specific in China. I know it's working in the States, but do the regulation allow?
Well, there are ways. I believe there are ways around. For example, there are those companies, right? They use the token where you accumulate several tokens, you can exchange for whatever you wants to get. So this depends on what's your definition of exchanging. Okay, if you want to exchange.
I want to make money out of it.
I feel like you need to let the speaker finish before you.
Sorry.
I think you asked like 5 or 6 questions at this point. So let's just wrap this up and then we can move on.
That's actually something we want to prevent, because a lot of the token you don't want people to see the arbitrage opportunity that make money on that. There are different kinds of token. The cryptocurrency kind of token is pretty much for the trading and kind of like a financial product. But for example, if you're an electronic company, you kind of give the token to be the usage of the electricity. You actually don't want people to buy a whole bunch of the token. Then when there is a peak of using the electricity, they hold it, charge an enormous amount of price so that they can make money. Okay, so this is something actually when you design the incentive you want to avoid. I want to point out is that not every blockchain system require token. That's number one. For example, IBM for the food, they pretty much treat the blockchain system as a shared database with great security, and everybody get the same database at the same time. And then for the when you talk about the token, like in China, right? First, I know there's like under kind of the people-to-people trading, if you're talking about the cryptocurrency. And second is that there are those specific market tokens that's specifically for that specific market, but not in the general, right? Am I right, Huadong?
Yeah. So basically, see, for example, you mentioned example here, right? So if you want the customer share their data, they can use this kind of like mechanism. So if you share my data, you get the token. Also, the token cannot be traded on the exchange market, but you can use that token to get a discount if you buy a next hair products, for example. Right? So the hair can control that.
So in this case, actually, it's the customer make the money, not as an investment tool, right? That's actually a lot of the blockchain they want to design so that not every token is reconsidered as something you can gather and sell it at a high price.
I think the last thing I'll say is that if it turns out that tokens are actually a net good for society, I don't see why over the long term they would continue to be prohibited. But obviously that's yet to be determined. Cool. All right, I'd like to thank our speakers and thank our audience. It was a lot of fun.